welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And for this video, I'm doing the fourth and final film of this Giallo collection box set that I've been doing, but not the last Giallo review of the marathon, far from it. And that is 1978's The Bloodstained Shadow, which this is a different cover than what you'll see in the thumbnail because I thought this looked very close to the cover for Suspiria, which came out the following year, so I wouldn't be surprised. And it was directed by Antonio Beto, who I actually thought did a lot more Giallo films than just this and Watch Me When I Kill. And I did just look it up to be sure, and those were his only two Giallo films. I actually thought he did a lot more. And it stars, well, it was a story by Antonio Beto and Domenico Malin, and it was written by those two and Marissa Andalou. And it stars Lino Capolicchio, Stefania Cassini, Craig Hill, Massimo Serrato, Juliette Medial, and Laura Nucci. And and the music was done by Stelvio Cipriani, and even though they're credited here, they're not credited in the film, but Goblin. And it was because, I think it was because Goblin was too expensive, but he liked what he heard, so he just kind of used some of their music. I could be wrong on that. I know that was the case with another film, but, or he just used some pre-existing Goblin tracks, or I'm not sure what it was, but seeing Goblin now, it reminded me. And there is a scene where I was like, wow, this really sounds like Goblin. Overall, I would say this is one of the longer Giallo films, clocking in at 109 minutes. Not a terribly long film, but this one definitely had some pacing issues. I will say it's a good film. It's a very good-looking film. I'd say it's fairly acted. In fact, the lead actor, Lino Capolicchio, kind of looks like James McAvoy. Not nearly as good an actor, but he kind of reminded me of him. But this does have some pacing issues. There are long stretches where it does kind of get bogged down. I will say the kills are well escalated. In fact, we get a slow motion strangulation right before the opening credits. And then the opening credits is just, this still shot of the dead girl laying in the grass, field, building up in the background. And it's not freeze frame, it's, see the wind blowing and stuff. And I thought that was going to set the tone for what kind of film we were watching, but it's a lot of time in between each kill. And I mean, they range from strangulations to, there is one with some dangerous stunt work. Think the car death of the night Evelyn came out of the grave, but with the boat, because it takes place in Venice, or near Venice. And there's a fireplace death, which I thought was well shot, and fairly gruesome. I mean, you don't see anything, but there's the way it's edited was very effective. Not a very bloody film. And I would say the pacing does help some of it. I mean, it does get boring at times, but at other times it allows you to really think about what you're seeing. A lot of times And this is the first time I really thought of that, or thought of this. And this is my 45th Giallo review. A lot of them happen really fast, so you kind of don't really get a lot of time to really process all the information that you've been given. But here, I was really able to follow the breadcrumbs because it is very slow. And I was kind of, there were times where I was kind of tuning out and just kind of thinking about some of the stuff that was happening. But I guess to sum up the story before spoilers is, so after we get that killing, the strangulation, where some years later, and there's this professor, I don't know if it says of what. If they did, I totally missed it, but his name is Stefano. Even right here it says, looking like an Italian James McAvoy. I had not looked at this yet. He's a college professor. Now, I guess it takes place in Murano, which I think is near Venice, because they mention Venice, and there is, a lot of canals. He had just suffered a nervous breakdown. We open up with him on a train where he meets this woman named Sandra. He's staying with his much older priest brother, Paolo. And his first night back, there's this seance, which I don't remember the priest being at, but I guess he was there. There's like this local medium that everyone has said is kind of a fraud. It is. It shows us during the seance. She has all this recording equipment, so she takes everyone's deep secrets and uses them for blackmail. But then that night, Paolo witnesses out his window the medium being strangled, and that's what kicks off the whole movie. And other members of this seance are the ones being targeted. And they all have some sort of vice as well. Like, there's a doctor who's a gambler. There's this count who I think is also like a piano teacher. But it's hinted that I don't want to get demonetized, but he likes kids. He's even approached by Paulo at one point that, people know what you're up to and you better stop. So they have some sort of vice, and Paulo really acts as he did come across as self-righteous, and at first it seemed like the antithesis to Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling, which really shows Christianity in a very negative light. This seemed to have somewhat of a positive image. So, and the reason why Stefano gets so hooked into this case, and he's the one we follow. I know a lot of times in Giallo, someone outside of law enforcement takes upon themselves to solve the case for whatever reason their connection is to it. Sometimes maybe we'll see law enforcement coming in and out or helping. Law enforcement is useless in this. We get like one scene of them in their office, and then other scenes they're out in the canal or bullshitting or doing patrol, not solving shit. But Apollo is getting these threatening letters that at first are like your past and your fate are linked by death, or all these sort of kind of cryptic but threatening notes, and he's freaking out about it. So Stefano takes it upon himself to solve it, and eventually Sandra, he's walking along the town one day and he sees her. So then they begin a friendship, eventually a relationship, and they start to kind of solve it together. And I really picked, I mean, I've noticed this a lot in Giallo, but this one, I noticed it very much. And I think it's because the pacing was very slow. Like, whenever you have a character being confronted about something, there's always, like, a killing right after, or, like, when someone leaves someone behind, like, at their house, we then get the killer to come in, almost like it wants us to think it's the last person we saw. Um, Also, the killer seems to be ransacking whoever they kill. So, like, after the medium is killed, we see the black glove killer with their POV going through all her books and drawers, finds the reel of the tape of that seance, and then there's not really anyone. There's not really anything taken from the Count, but the Count is stabbed with, I don't remember what it's called. It's not an axe or a sword, but it's something that like a knight with armor would have. um, but uh, I just forgot her name. Sandra's stepmother, who's very elderly and needs to be looked after. She, when she's killed, she's the one that gets her head put in the fireplace. And you can tell it's a dummy, but the editing that makes it effective is it shows her hand on the rug, like, being killed anyway is gonna seem painful, but it's little editing tricks, like Friday 13th, the axe to the head, it hits the lamp first to show it's made out of metal. Just those little kind of editing tricks can make it more effective. Like, we all know burning would suck, so just seeing her kind of writhe in pain makes it all the more effective. And I thought that was actually the most brutal kill. It does try to make us think, like, there's this other woman named Nardi, who she talks to the local doctor, kind of like, so people are talking to the cops. Do you think they know anything? The doctor knows what she's talking about. So it's almost like it's trying to set us up in that direction. And then eventually Stefano does go to the elderly father of the girl that was killed in the very beginning. It never says how long ago it was, but it was some years. And one plot device that's not used much, in fact so little that you can forget it's even there, is when Stefano sees death or something horrific, he has these triggering flashbacks of a young boy in a sunny field being horrified by something. He doesn't know who it is or why, but it keeps happening. He says it happens often, but I think it only happens like 3 or 4 times, including the climax. So I honestly kept forgetting about it. Which, I guess before I go any further and before I get spoilers, I'll talk about the music and the atmosphere. It is a rather atmospheric film because it's very overcasty, cloudy, gloomy, and you really feel that. It is mostly quiet. It does show a lot of outside, like walking around. There is a scene where Stefano and Sandra are out on his boat, and it's actually sunny out, and they're wearing bright colors, and it's actually kind of jarring. It almost feels like a different movie. The music, like when Stefano is walking around, there's this high note piano piece that sounds like the melody to DSRA, which is most commonly known for being the theme to The Shining. I know it's not, but some of the notes does sound like that melody. But then there's other parts, like when the killer is in Sandra's house. The music almost sounds like something right before like an action scene or a fight scene from that period. And then I think it's a scene in Nardi's house where you get the real goblin-y type score where all of us like it's kind of, oh no, that's the same scene with Sandra. She walks in this one room and then you get like the fast piano. It sounds just like Goblin. Turns out, excuse me, it most likely was. So but the music fit every scene that it was in. And as far as the atmosphere goes, or to add on to it, there are some scenes like when Paulo is in the church, you get these wide shots like from up above. You see him running through the corridors of the church or up the stairs. Beautifully shot. The set pieces are done well. I will say that. Not as good as like an Argento film or a Martino film, but you know, if we're in the church, Beto really utilizes it, and it looks great. So I guess with that, I'll get into spoilers. But can I recommend it? I mean, sure, especially for the twist. This does have a good twist. I thought it was going to be really lame and expected, but then the real twist came, and I really like how they explained this motive. Because I've seen better movies with like a similar motive, and it seems more complicated. But this, I really liked how they explained this. And of course, the ending has been compared to Vertigo. There's a lot of references to past movies, like blatant ones. Like there's a scene where there's a doll where the eyes are poked out with fingers, very much like Torso. So, I mean, certainly for the atmosphere, some of the cinematography, and the twist on that, I can recommend it. Just know it does feel its length, and it does have pacing issues. But with that, I'm going to get into spoilers. So now that we're getting into spoilers, very early in the film, when Narnia is talking to the doctor, I honestly thought that was just to set up like a red herring. But but during that conversation, she says the police have already talked to the Count, and then I think this was right before the Count gets killed. And then there's nothing about her till way later in the film. It is mentioned earlier on that she's kind of weird. People kind of talk about her. We find out, like, well over an hour into the film that she has a mentally disabled son, like a full-grown son, that she keeps locked away. And I thought this actor did a fine job. He kind of reminded me of, not the actor, but his performance. Sort of reminded me of The Unseen, a really good, underrated slasher film from the 80s. He starts crying and pointing to his doll. So Nardi says, has Miriam been mad? So she starts punching it. He's laughing, rips the limbs off, laughing but getting serious, and then she pokes the eyes out. That's the Torso moment. The doctor is the one that gets killed. He's pushed into the canal, and he's holding onto this boat as it's going. Then the killer gets in this other boat, goes right alongside of him, and it reminded me of the stunt work in Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, that car death. When Sandra's, I thought it was her mother, but at one point in the film they mention it's her stepmother. She might have said that, I don't remember. She has this painting of, there's a house on the hill, there's a young girl, a devil grabbing her, and then there's like an angel and someone else up top. We see this early on. Stefano sees it, and it draws a lot of attention to it. And after seeing this many Giallos, I know even the most random thing, if they're going to draw attention to it, it's a massive clue. Probably even the answer. But that was in the very beginning. And eventually, when she is killed via fireplace, the killer takes it or burns it. I think burns it. And then later on, and Sandra shows that she has a photo album with photographs of all her mother's paintings. And she's occupied. We see the killer going through her book, taking the photo out. That's when she walks through the house with goblin music. And then the killer leaves because the cop comes in. And this is right after Stefano leaves. So, of course, he leaves, killer comes in. I think maybe it's Stefano, his flashbacks. But, so, skipping to the end, the big thing is Stefano notices on all these notes to Paolo that the T, that they're all from typewriter. The T, the top of the T only comes down on the left side. The right side straight across. So Sandra's doing something, she drops some mail, he's picking it up for it, and he notices a letter with that T. He reads it, and he knows it comes from Nardi. So he goes to Nardi's house. He doesn't know about her son yet, and he finds her with her throat slit. Really the only blood we get in the movie, I think. So then he's like, now he's kind of confused. So we see Stefano, who's attacked at the church by her son. Also, there's one attack earlier on Paolo, where the cross almost falls on him. That's what's keeping us thinking it's not Paolo. I'm already in spoilers, so. But apologize if you're still watching. So, police come, take him away, because he bashes him in the head, but just knocks him out. But Stefano is still bothered by the painting. He's trying to figure out, why did the killer take that painting? It doesn't fit in with anything else. And he always keeps a newspaper clipping of the girl from the beginning years ago in his wallet. So he looks at it. In the picture, he notices the building in the background. And then, you know, it shows us it's the same building for the painting. And that's when he puts it together. And the killer all along was Paolo. Now, the motive was, well, so it was Nardi who killed the medium, because the medium knew about her son. So she killed her, but she noticed that Paolo saw her from his window. So, and she thought he knew it was her. But here's the thing. Paolo did not recognize her, but he did know that because at the medium's place, because the medium has been blackmailing him for quite some time, and he had this book that detailed the killing of the girl from the beginning, and that book was also seized when Nardi took the recording. But he didn't recognize it was Nardi, so he didn't know who from the seance it was. So that's why he's been going around killing everyone from the seance. I hope I explained that well enough. So every time Paulo's being attacked, like with the falling cross and the notes, that's from Nardi. But all the murders after the medium was done by Paulo. And I do like how that's shot, because as Stefano figures it out, he's running back to Paulo's church, and it's intercut with that still shot of the boy in the field, like he's having his flashback, and it's kind of playing out more, but not quite. And then when he confronts Paulo, he says, that boy in my vision was always me. I just figured it out. I was never able to play it out completely, but, when I saw the painting, it triggered enough to remember that it was you. It was buried in my subconscious. And so then right at that moment, I think Paulo kind of thought Stefano was going to be on his side and he was going to get away with it. But just as that moment, Sandra walks in, and there was another man from the church up above who heard it. So then you do get this cool scene where he has this vision of himself in front of the church, I guess giving communion, I'm not sure what it's called, to all the victims that he killed throughout the film. I guess sort of like his penance. And then, he can't take it, so he runs out. Stefano goes to chase him, makes it all the way to the top of the steeple, jumps out. Now, normally we just get a shot of a dummy falling, but here we actually do get a shot of Paulo screaming and falling. Looks kind of cheap, but I thought that was nice. And then a far away wide shot of the dummy falling. And in a classic Italian film fashion, as soon as he lands, end credits. No epilogue or anything. So, yeah, I'm glad they did. I honestly thought they were just going to leave it as her, her son that she kept away, which she did keep him away because I guess she thought he was dangerous, or at least that's what Stefano initially took when he thought that son was the one that killed the girl and all the people. And I was like, they only showed him once way in the film. That can't be who it is. And there's only like 10 minutes left. It's like, there's got to be more. It kind of felt like Stefano in this. But, I like the idea of, someone witnessing a murder, but they've already committed a murder, but they don't know who that person is, but they know they have the answer to his crime, and that the killer's part of a certain group of people, and he's not sure who it is, so he has to kill all of them. And, that's why he took the painting from, that's why he took that painting. So, I thought that was interesting. It was it was an interesting motive. A lot of times when we're doing these Giallo films, you only have so many motives that you can do that sound interesting. I thought this one was well done. That's why I said before, definitely for the climax, the reveal and the motive at the end, I would say it's worth the runtime. It's not completely boring. There is just a lot of times where it drags. But it does have this sort of gloomy atmosphere to it. That also helps. But with that, so that's the fourth and final film from this box set, but not my last Giallo review of the marathon. So, yeah, I know this is probably not my best review, but I all the same, I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.